What's up guys, Tim Little here with TacticalBassin. Today's video I want to talk to you guys about my top 5 baits for fishing shallow bait balls. You know, this time of the year, it's springtime, it's warming up, the shad's moving back in the backs of the coves, and when you find bass that have bait pinned in the back of a cove and blowing up on them, it's a great way to catch some big fish and catch a lot of fish. So when I say shallow bait balls, I'm talking anything that's no deeper than, let's say, 15 feet. You can see the fish on the surface, you can see boils, you see active bass feeding on them. It's for any of you guys that have ever seen that, it's pretty cool to watch. But the one thing you want to understand about fish and bass following around these schools of bait, you know, in Clearlake we have shad. That's typically what the big bait balls are here. When these bass are following them around, you'll see the blowups and stuff, and occasionally you'll see big blowups. You'll see big fish coming up to the top and eating them, but typically it's the smaller fish. And what I've kind of learned, or what I've seen, what I've had the experience of, is typically the bigger fish are below the shad, below the smaller bass, and that's where you can, if you can key into that depth, those fish, that's where you upgrade substantially. Those fish are down there, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, when the birds come in, they're eating the bait, or the small bass are blowing up on the bait, there's wounded shad or wounded bait that just kind of flutter their way down. And what I think is going on, I think those big fish are down there, they're big, they're lazy, they're just waiting for the food to literally fall and right in front of their face. So typically, from what I've learned, is if you can stay away from the fish on the surface and focus deeper, focus on the fish below, you can get the bigger fish in the schools. Now, let's talk about baits. For me, it's hard to beat a deep diving crankbait. You know, anything like a Lucky Craft, a Pointer 78, or a Stacy 90, something like that, something that you can get down and pause it, it suspends in their face, and they eat it. It's a great bait to get down there. One thing also, unless, getting back to the schools of the bait, unless you see active fish, you know, you see the boils, or you see the blowups, you see the shad getting spooked and parting ways, if you just see the shad swimming around, right? There's nothing really scaring them, or you don't see them acting like something's chasing them. Typically, the fish will be lethargic underneath. You know, why do they need to run around all day when they could just decide to eat for 15 or 20 minutes and come up through that school and eat real quick and then be done? So typically, if the fish aren't acting frantic, or they aren't acting scared, typically those fish are down there just kind of lethargic, hanging out, or they're a cast or two away from the actual bait ball. But if the fish aren't actively feeding on the school of bait fish, the slower presentations, the better, from what I've learned. You know, so if you are throwing the rip bait, you know, you're not going to just want to be ripping it through there. You know, rip, pause, real subtle rips, rip, pause, rip, pause, and then it'll just load up, you know. So if the fish are crazy active and they're boiling and swirling and blowing up, throw it in there, rip, pause, rip, pause. Get it going, get it active. But again, if the fish aren't active, slower is better. So another bait that is, it's really hard to beat on those big balls of bait is going to be the, what do I do with it? The Underspin. I said it somewhere. I don't know where I said it. There it is. The Underspin. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this bait because, quite frankly, Matt just did a whole Underspin video. So if you guys haven't watched that video, right up here in the, the left corner, see that little eye? That's a card. If you click on that, there's actually a link of that video. I'll put that video there. If you guys haven't watched the underspin video, it's a great video. Matt talks all about the different types of underspins, when to throw which type, and actually catches some good fish on it. So if you guys haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch that one if you want to learn about underspins. But fishing, real quick, fishing through bait balls. You know, there's 100,000 live fish swimming in front of these bass right now. What makes them want to eat your bait versus everything else that's out there? You want to look a little bit different, and that's where the underspin with that blade, the flash, that's where you can really get some big bites on that. So number 2 is going to be an underspin. Feeding right off of that is going to be the A-rig. You guys have heard, you know, I think Matt's done videos on A-rigs. I've done videos on A-rigs. If you guys haven't watched those, again, I'll put those up in the cards as well. But depending on water clarity and how active the fish are, I will run a blade with, or a rig with either blades or no blades. Typically, the clearer the water and the better the visibility, I'll go no blades. It's just a more natural look, and you got that school. From what I've learned, again, if those fish aren't acting, throw that A-rig out, let it hit bottom, and just creep it. Every 2 or 3 handle, or 3 or 4 handle turns, give it a little reel twitch or a rod twitch, and that gets that whole school to expand and condense like a natural school, school of shad, and that's typically when you're going to get your bites. So another bait that works awesome. Again, these big fish are sitting below that school, and they're waiting for those wounded shad or the dying shad to float down. A great bait that imitates that is going to be some kind of flutter spoon. This is actually the Lake Fork spoon. There's a bunch of different brands on the market, and just like any video, all these baits that I'm talking about, I'll put links down below in the video description. So colors, baits, rod and reel setups, all that sort of stuff for each type of bait, we'll put the links down below. So, but yeah, the flutter spoon, throw that out there, and what this does, this kind of just flutters down just like a wounded or a dying bait fish, and once it gets to the bottom, you're gonna hop and let it flutter down again, and you can get some really big bites on this. You know, these spoons, they come from anywhere from 2 to 3 inches all the way up to 8 or 9 inches. Depending on the bait fish that's in your lake. Maybe they're big gizzard shad or something like that, and you want to throw a big, see, I got one right here. Maybe a big 8-inch spoon. You know, match the hatch. You gotta typically throw something that's just a little bigger. It looks a little bit different than the bait fish that you're fishing around. So flutter spoon. Another killer is just going to be a weightless worm. You know, you throw out like a 5-inch Senko in some kind of shad color, either like electric shad or natural shad or something like that. I'm gonna wacky rig it, throw it out there, and just let that thing just flutter down through that school of shad. Again, there's something about that, just the real subtle movement and just that dying pattern, that dying fall through that school. Those fat lethargic fish that are down there just waiting for food to fall on their face. That's a perfect way to get bit. If you're not getting bit on the A-rig or the flutter spoon or Topwater, anything like that, switch to finesse. You'll be surprised. Feeding right off of that, how could you talk about dying bait fish without talking about a Zoom Fluke? Matt just shot a video, I don't know, maybe a month or 2 ago, about a really cool way to rig this. So I will also put that up there in the corner. But a Fluke is a great way to you could fish this fast, you could fish it slow, depending on what the fish are doing or how active the school is or the bait fish are. But just a dying bait, throw it out there, let it fall down. It's more of a finessey presentation than like the flutter spoon. Let it even sit on bottom and hop it up every few seconds. But it's a great way to. I watched a guy the other day. We were fishing a bait, and I'm gonna actually go over to a big school of shad that I found. So this won't just be a talking video. I'm gonna do some fishing, try and show you how to catch some fish on some of this stuff. But what I'm getting at is we were throwing rip baits, we were throwing A-rigs, and he actually tied on a Fluke onto his finesse rod, and he put the hammer to him. He was catching, he said he had 37 pounds or something on just the Fluke. So depending on what the fish want that day and the presentation they want. All these are great choices, but a Fluke is a must-have. And I don't know if I've talked about topwater or not, but you know, I kind of told you that the bigger fish are down below in the school. But every once in a while, you'll get those big boils, those big blowups, and you just know that their big fish are feeding on top. That's when I will throw a topwater. You know, something like a popper, either a Rico or Yellow Magic, or a walking bait like a River Sea Rover or a Super Spook, something like that. There's in the poppers, in the walking baits, there's a bunch of different awesome baits that work in different circumstances. So again, we'll put those links down there below. But if the big ones are eating on topwater, you definitely want to have one on. You don't want to be the guy without a topwater tied on when they're blowing up and can't do anything about it. But anyways, guys, those are my top 5 baits for schooling bass on shallow bait balls. So I'm gonna throw everything back in the box, pack everything up, and let's go fishing, guys. Let's go try and catch some of these fish. Jeff, how's it going, bud? I'm doing well. right, guys, so sorry about that. I had a very important phone call I had to take, but you guys saw I caught quite a few fish, a couple good ones. Definitely multitasking. It was hard to pay attention and talk to the camera and stuff. But anyways, hopefully you guys got to see that big school of shad. Maybe you got to see some of the blow-ups in the background and stuff. But I did hook one really big one on the flutter spoon. I couldn't turn it. It bent out my hook, and looked back and the camera was off because it was too hot. So anyways, Underspin did most of the damage. I think that 4 or 5 pounder came just towards the end on the Underspin, but all those baits are great. You gotta kind of go through all of them and see what let the fish tell you what they want. So hope you guys like the video. I hope you guys learned something. If you guys see those big schools of shad, try those baits, and we'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a good day.